Welcome, everyone, to the Carton Council's Road to Recycling podcast series. This episode is a school striving for zero waste. I'm Michele Wagner, and I'm part of the Carton Council school field team handling the Southwest and Northeast territories. Schools across the country have been striving to become more sustainable. Many recycle paper in the classroom and have tried to implement waste reduction practices in their cafeterias, but is zero waste really possible in schools? I'm joined today by my friend and colleague, Jeremy Drake, who heads up Strategy Zero Waste Solutions in Missoula, Montana. Jeremy was contracted by the Missoula Public School District to help them develop a zero waste strategy. Jeremy, hello and welcome.
Hey, Michelle. It's great to talk to you today. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I'm really passionate about zero waste in schools. And I think what's going on here in Missoula really could be a good model for other communities.
First, let's start by talking about what is meant by zero waste, because I feel like the term is used a lot, but it would be good to know exactly how it's defined surrounding this initiative.
There really is only one peer reviewed, internationally accepted definition of zero waste, and it was created by a group called the Zero Waste International Alliance. So, zero waste is the conservation of all resources by means of responsible production, consumption, reuse, and recovery of products, packaging, and materials without burning and with no discharges to land, water, or air that threaten the environment or human health. So, that's a pretty dense definition. Let's break it down a little bit. Zero really means zero. It's an aspirational goal. It's kind of like zero accidents on a job site. In terms of operationally, Zwiad defines it as 90% reduction in destructive disposal, which is considered forms of incineration or landfilling. The whole idea of zero waste is conserving resources, not destroying resources. And when we burn them, they're gone, right? We need to go back to the earth and find some more. So that's a key piece of this definition. And then no discharges. That means that we're properly managing all the discards. They're not ending up as litter. They're not polluting the environment. They're not threatening the health of any of living creatures.
Jeremy, that's great. It helps give us a good foundation to start the conversation. You mentioned the city, so it's my understanding that this whole idea didn't originate within the schools, but it was rather a top-down approach. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. The zero waste movement in Missoula really started as a grassroots effort. Community members rallying around this idea of zero waste. So the idea of zero waste really galvanized folks in the town, and they advocated the city to adopt a zero waste goal. And so in some cases, there were organizations that just picked it up because they thought it sounded like a great idea. The goal for Missoula became known as 0 by 50. So the concept of zero waste, that operational 90% reduction of disposal by the year 2050. Organizations around the community started adopting it on their own. With the school district, there was a key moment where the mayor at the time, at the request of the group that brought the resolution to the city, called a meeting with the superintendent of the Missoula County Public Schools and said, "Hey, we've just adopted this goal. The schools are a big part of our community. We really can't get there without you. Are you in?" And in that short meeting, that was really a key turning point for the schools. The superintendent said, "Yeah, this sounds like the right direction. It does align with our strategic vision for the district, and so let's do it." And what that resulted in was a partnership with the superintendent where he was able to provide leadership to help move the school towards zero waste. The first really step in that process was that he helped us start a zero waste planning process with the school district. We were able to use the guiding principles that we had developed for the city in the school planning process. And so we ended up with students, teachers, custodians, operational folks, board of trustees members, all part of this planning process, school administrators too, principals. And after about 6 months, we had a plan that had input from all across the school community for how to move the school district towards zero waste. And we decided that a good first step was let's try a zero waste pilot. So we identified a elementary school. The superintendent helped establish that relationship, and we got to work on applying that district-wide plan to one specific school building.
And that was Jeanette Rankin Elementary that you started with, correct?
That's right. Yep.
So once Jeanette Rankin Elementary was selected, how did you start?
We kind of developed our planning process at Jeanette Rankin, and we've replicated that at all the other elementary schools now. So we're going back to 2019. We connected with the principal at the school. She was completely on board. Christina Stevens, a really excellent champion for a pilot school. She rallied folks in her school community. We created a planning team, and we had a series of meetings to talk through what the school was interested in doing. One of the first actions that we did was we did two audits of the school's waste stream. So in the spring of 2019, we rolled up our sleeves and started digging through what was in the dumpster behind the school. There wasn't a lot of recycling happening at the time there. And what we found specifically for the cafeteria was that there are four main categories that we needed to develop in a sorting station in the cafeteria to divert materials from the landfill. They helped us create our sorting station. And so one of the main materials that we were finding in the trash was liquids, right? So milk and juice. The second were milk cartons, empty juice cartons. The third was food scraps and napkins and other compostable items. And the fourth, and probably the most surprising, was edible food, unopened, packaged food, and whole fruit. For example, we're finding milk cartons. Kids had taken a milk carton from the lunch line and not even open it. And without an opportunity to put that somewhere other than the trash bin, it's going to get trashed. And so we found that 20% of what was in the trash after lunch was food that hadn't been eaten. Those sealed milk cartons, sealed sandwiches, other kinds of packaged food, and whole fruit. So that food capture or food rescue piece became a really key to our sorting station.
So, Jeremy, how else did the audit inform the zero waste program in your cafeteria?
So there's two different kinds of lunch that kids eat, and this probably happens at all schools, right? There's the what's called the hot lunch, which is what kids are getting at the from the lunch lady, and then there's what they call the cold lunch, which is what they're bringing from home in their lunch boxes. And so when we were sorting through that cafeteria trash, we were finding stuff that came from the school kitchen, and then we were finding stuff that came from people's homes. And using the best practices that we understand about signage and educating, we were able to use images of the actual items that kids have in their hand for our signs. And so we took pictures of the materials that are coming out of the kitchen and put them on the appropriate signs, like an opened milk carton on the recycling sign, a sealed milk carton on the reuse sign, a whole orange on the reuse sign, and then also some examples of the most popular things that kids bring from home, like granola bar wrappers and yogurt pop wrappers and those kinds of things that we were able to get images of and put those on our landfill sign. And so by and large, our signs have very limited text and a lot of pictures, and that helps, especially when we're trying to teach the littlest kids, right? Kindergartners, first graders. They want to see a picture, and as closely as what's in their hand that can align to that picture, the better. And so that audit was really, really important for in showing us those kinds of examples of what kids are going to have in their hand as they're moving through the sorting station.
Very cool. Jeremy, as you talk about this, it sounds like there are two overarching areas that, for focus. One is building the infrastructure, but also social acceptance. Can you talk first about the physical infrastructure a little bit more?
They really do work together. Without that social piece, you're not necessarily going to move the needle at all. And so you do need to have the physical infrastructure, the signs, cans in place, all those pieces, even the collection, in order to make it work, but they need to be supported by the social infrastructure. The school district zero waste plan was based on the framework from the city 0 by 50 plan. And so we developed a sort of what we call the four paths to zero waste. The first is access, the second is infrastructure, third is education, and the fourth is policy. And so that access piece is just ensuring that wherever folks are, they have access to make the choices to create zero waste, right? So if there's only trash cans around, then they can't decide that they're going to recycle something that's recyclable, compost something that's compostable. They just don't have access to that option to make that choice. The infrastructure is what we're talking about, right? It's having all the physical stuff in place from inside the building to behind the building, the where things are being collected, and also the social piece. And that social piece also overlaps with the education, right? So education is such a huge aspect of this. Zero waste is ultimately a cultural change project, right? It's not something that we can do overnight. If we're going to change the culture and move away from how natural it is to waste, then we got to start kids young. And what I've learned since doing this is that if this whole zero waste concept makes so much sense to young people. It's mostly the older folks, the staff in the schools that need a little more cajoling, a little more convincing that that it makes sense to do. For the kids, that it's a no brainer for them.
You also said that in conversations that you and I have had offline, that it was really important to identify in the planning what things were already in existence and working. And one of those was that you all don't have green teams, which a lot of school districts do. But you can you tell us what you did have in place and how that worked to utilize what was already in existence?
So in the elementary school level, which is where we've been focusing now, you're right. There haven't been any green teams, but there have been some other existing sort of cultural elements that we've been able to integrate with the zero waste program. At one school, Lewis and Clark Elementary, they have had a fourth grade service club in place. And that club, they've been picking up recycling in the classrooms. They help put up signs for zero waste around the school. And one of the really important pieces that they did was they started helping out in the cafeteria. In a nutshell, we're sorting, and the littlest kids need some help. Kindergartners, first graders, they need some help with sorting. And so at that school, the fourth grade service club volunteered to help those little ones through the sorting line. And that, peer to peer support, opportunity for leadership has been just a really beautiful thing to see develop and adds sustainability to the program. At other schools, there's kind of been a similar approach, taking fourth and fifth graders, asking for volunteers who want to help the younger kids through the line.
It's so cool that you got the older students, actually, that they were so willing to help, guide the younger children. That's great. You also did something else to supplement, which I thought was really really cool. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's another one of the existing programs that we were able to build on. So, Missoula County Public Schools had an existing relationship with an organization in town called Missoula Aging Services, where they place seniors in volunteer positions throughout the community. And so we worked with Missoula Aging Services to create a volunteer zero waste cafeteria coach position to place some of their volunteers in the schools to help with sorting. And it is now a community wide program. And so anybody in the community now can volunteer to help the schools during lunch as zero waste cafeteria coaches. And it's amazing to see the interest, right? There's folks that are coming in, maybe they're family members, maybe they're not, but they're coming and helping schools during lunch.
That's a terrific idea. And I also love anytime you can pair up children with seniors, it's like a win-win. So that's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. What has been the biggest barrier that you faced or are still facing?
So this summer, I got word that there was going to be a lot of staff turnover on the custodial side at some of the schools that we'd already established zero waste programs at. And so, I got nervous. I thought, okay, now we're going to have to train up a whole new set of employees. What's that going to look like? But it turned out that they all got right on board, loved the concept of the program, and in most cases just stepped right in and kept on going. And in some cases have been actually figuring out ways to improve the program. And so without custodial support, these programs really couldn't thrive.
Jeremy, can you talk about your results of this whole zero waste initiative at the school district?
Yeah, absolutely. Bottom line is that the zero waste schools, the volume of what's being trashed coming out of the cafeterias has decreased over 90%. It actually exceeded our expectations based on the results of our audit. But we've been able to do that through the food rescue program, which has been embraced by the schools and the district, and that's a key piece. And also composting. Together, the food rescue and the composting make up a huge percentage by weight of what's being thrown away. And then also the recycling, which recycling cartons takes up a lot of volume. So not only are we reducing the volume of what we're throwing away to the landfill, we've also been able to change the on the collection side, the how that looks and the volume of service on the collection side. So we precipitated this shift away from what has been a mentality that recycling is extra to a more systems view approach of materials management. So it's really evaluating what can be diverted through recycling and composting and reducing the landfill service to accommodate for that diversion. And so when schools are thinking, oh, how do we raise money for recycling? They're not thinking, well, for recycling everything, then we reduce the amount of landfill service we need. And that equates to saving money. So what we're seeing at these schools, as we reduce landfill service, we've got money in the budget to then apply to recycling and composting service. And here in Missoula, the cost of landfill is a lot lower than it is in some other places. I'm working with a community in Massachusetts right now where the cost of landfill service is twice the cost of recycling service. So when you think about that, if you can cut your landfill in half, you've suddenly paid for your recycling.
Jeremy, that's a really great point for school districts considering zero waste to look at. Thank you for pointing that out. So you've got all 9 elementary schools. I think you said you just had the last one that has picked up this initiative. And so you're moving to the middle schools next. Is that right?
That's right. Yep. We are moving ahead to plan this fall with one middle school. We're kind of doing the same approach that we did with elementary. We're going to start with one pilot school and then roll out to the others. And the whole theory of change here is that this is changing the culture, right? So we want kids to grow up with zero waste as the new normal. And so if we start in the elementary school and then as they matriculate up through their school career, they see that this is just how it is, then we can begin to shift the concept. And that's important, particularly in the context of a community like Missoula that has a zero waste goal, where there's other entities and organizations around the community that have adopted the goal, so that there's this school community connection going on, right? There's this congruence when you go to the Western Montana Fair and you see recycling, composting, and landfill stations that look a lot like the ones that are in your school, then you're shifting the culture and you're saying, oh, this isn't just some weird thing we do at school. This is actually a thing that we can do anywhere. And it's building that congruence across the community that is really going to help us shift the culture and make zero waste the new normal.
With regard to school milk cartons, cartons can be up to 20% of a school's waste stream. What advice would you have for anyone interested in bringing carton recycling to their school?
Well, I would suggest that they reach out to their recycling service provider and ask the question, can we include cartons in our recycling stream? They may have a market that can accept cartons with mixed paper or some kind of sort. And so finding out if it's even a possibility is really the first step. If the answer is yes, then start figuring out what that might look like for your school. And as we've learned, cafeteria is really our key spot. And so in the absence of top down mandates or a zero waste plan in the community or anything like that, it could be bringing the economic argument. Well, we're throwing away a lot of air in these empty milk cartons. If we're able to reshuffle our collection to move those into recycling, and if recycling doesn't cost as much as the landfill or the trash, if it's incineration, whatever it is, then there could just be an economic argument to bring carton recycling to the school.
Carton Council also has some great materials available to help you start a milk carton recycling program in your school district. We also have grants available to help fund equipment to get you started. And so please visit our website, www.recyclecartons.com, and click on schools on the homepage. Jeremy, if someone has any questions for you, how do they reach you?
They can reach me by email at Jeremy, Jeremy, at strategyzerowaste.com. Zero is spelled out Zero. I'd love to hear from folks. I love talking about zero waste in schools. So shoot me an email.
Jeremy, it was such a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Michelle.